So in August of every year, my season long buddies always ask me if I've done any mocks yet. To which I tell them I've been doing best ball drafts. And at that point, they ask, well, what is best ball? So this video is for them. This is for you. This is for anyone who is looking to try best ball. This is best ball for beginners. The best part about best ball, it's really the best part of your redraft leagues, your draft, the draft party. Just sitting there drafting a team, being excited about that team, and then that's it. It's set it and forget it. You don't have to manage the waiver wire. Waiver wire is fun until week 10, right? When you're just like, you can't possibly do another waiver wire, specifically if you have several leagues. There's no trades. So keep that in mind. You're not trying to load up on running back with the idea that you're going to trade some to some running back needy teams. You're going to trade for a wide receiver or a quarterback. There are no trades, so you're looking to draft a well balanced team, or at least a team that you expect to be well balanced. There's no setting lineup, so much like the waiver wire, it becomes tedious. That's the best part. You have your starting roster and your bench spots. You draft your team, it automatically scores the best players from each position each week, so you don't have to set lineups. Now, one of the first steps to playing best ball is what type of contest are you going to do? Knowing your goals is the first step. Do you want to be profitable or you want a lottery ticket? Do you want to treat this like you're just getting ready for your season long league and just draft a 12 person league where you only have to beat out 11 other teammates? That's probably the best way to start. Think of this, as you're going against your league mates. You're only trying to beat 11 other people. So the smaller the tournament, the less off the board you need to go with your picks. If you're good at drafting in redraft leagues, this is a good format to be profitable. You don't need to be perfect to beat 11 other people. You just need to be good enough to beat the general 11 that you would in all your season long leagues. Now, tournaments, this is your lottery ticket. Now, these can vary. They can go from 500 people, 1,000 people, to Best Ball Mania that has 600,000 entrants. So it ranges from thousands to hundreds of thousands. You are competing for life-changing money. This is Best Ball Mania, this screenshot here. So 1.5 million to first. This is your lottery ticket. The payout structure, the way it works, it's very difficult to be profitable. So you're really trying to win the tournament because even the bottom 1% of this can still only pay you $70. You place in the top 1%, but you're the bottom part of that, it's $70. So you're really shooting for trying to win that first place in these large tournaments like Best Ball Mania. So you're playing to win against thousands. So you're drafting with more correlation, which is essentially your quarterback plus a pass catcher. You're drafting for a high end outcome, and you are drafting essentially for a perfect draft. So one of the things that is most important in playing best ball, know the scoring. Are you playing on half PPR side or full PPR side? Underdog Fantasy does half PPR. So it's more contingent on scoring, right? So running backs are favored on that as far as rushing touchdown. Um, Full PPR like drafters and DraftKings, it is really good to have wide receivers, for example, they get a lot of targets because you get points per reception. So that's important. Next thing, know the schedule. So bye weeks are obviously important. That's something you want to be cognizant of. You're typically only going to start two quarterbacks if you have, or draft two quarterbacks. If you have two quarterbacks, they have the same bye week. That's a problem because you're taking a zero that week. So you got to know the bye weeks. There's no waiver wire. You can't pick up a guy on the waiver wire to just fill in for 1 week. So you got to be cognizant of that. Second, what is the scoring like? So, for example, drafters, they just do weeks 1 through 17. So that is their scoring. There's no playoff format. It's just if you have the highest score after 17 weeks, you win the money, which is 500,000. On Underdog Fantasy, they actually do weeks 1 through 14, with weeks 15, 16, and 17, elimination round 17 being the final and the big group. So this is important when we talk about potentially stacking. Last, draft strategy, again, it will change based on the format. So when you're doing a draft on drafters where it's just weeks 1 through 17, I'm not worried about stacking in week 17 so that I can have that high end outcome. So know the scoring and the schedule and draft accordingly. So this kind of goes into that a little further. Underdog fantasy, essentially, your qualifiers are week 1 through 14. So this is going to be, I believe, the top two people out of your season long part of it. And then you start to get into the playoffs, round 2, round 3, round 4. These are small groups. So not a lot of correlation is needed. Just the correlation that got you there, like stacking, Travis Kelsey with Patrick Mahomes, for example. We're going to get to a little bit of that later. But round 4, this is a 539 person final group. So you want to be cognizant of the week 17 schedule and look to stack players. For example, Denver is playing Cincinnati week 17. You might want to do Cortland Sutton and Jamar Chase type of stack if you can do so. So that's something you want to pay attention to. Again, in Drafters Fantasy, which I highly recommend if you are starting playing best ball this year, that you do Drafters Fantasy versus Underdog, softer format. There's less to worry about, less to get right. It's just week 7, 1 through 17, so no playoffs. So that is not something you have to worry about as much. Just pay attention to your bye weeks. Now, draft strategy. This is how are you going to attack your draft? A lot of this will depend on where you're picking in the draft. This can vary. Some drafts I may plan on going 0 RB, but I get the second overall pick and CD Lamb goes first. I'm now taking Christian McCaffrey. So I might go hero RB with that. So hero RB, 0 RB, and robust RB. Regardless of what the strategy is, I'm going to tell you guys it's best to take wide receivers early and often. So we're going to get in that real quick. So here RB is basically taking one running back in the first 2 rounds. This is a very proven strategy. You're basically saying, this is my anchor RB that I need. I'm still going wide receiver heavy, but I want this guy as my anchor. So one running back in the first 2 rounds, and then you wait before adding more running backs, but you're gonna basically hammer wide receivers after that. Now, typically with the hero RB, you're not taking a quarterback early. You kind of make that decision. I'm either taking an elite running back early, or if I do that, I'm not taking an elite quarterback. So it's running back and then hammer wide receivers. Now, 0 RB basically means you can do whatever you want in the first 7 rounds. You're just not taking a running back. So you're getting wide receiver. You might get an elite tight end. You might get an elite quarterback, and then you are trying to hit the middle of the draft, the sweet spots, guys that maybe are kind of undervalued, right? Zamir White, for example, who's projected as a starter. Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs, a lot of these guys you can get later. And the idea is a lot of these running backs, they get hurt, right? And so you're kind of going towards the middle round to target those areas. And you're so elite at wide receiver and maybe at quarterback and tight end that you feel overall great about your roster. So this is waiting until at least the 7th round. You'll generally finish with 5 to 7 running backs. One thing I want to say, remember, any of these draft strategies can win if you pick the right players. Now, robust RB this is way more contrarian. This basically means you load up on running back early. You might start with like 2 to 3 elite running backs, and then you go wide receiver the rest of the way. I would suggest being very good at scouting rookie wide receivers if you're going to go this way, because you're definitely going to need to hit on a lot of them. This way can win. It's not as common. It doesn't win nearly as often. So I certainly wouldn't just suggest going robust RB. Now, stacking. This is pairing 2 players together on the same team or in the same game to correlate a possible high-end outcome. Just know this, you have to stack. So if you're taking a quarterback, you have to stack with the pass catcher, at least one. Sometimes 2 is better, specifically if you have, 2 really good guys like Devonta Smith and AJ Brown stacked with Jalen Hurts. But just keep that in mind. Whoever your quarterback is, you're going to typically try to get at least 2, and you want them stacked with at least 1 pass catcher. Now, a secondary stack, this is something where it's like, well, I don't have, my wide receiver or my tight end stacked with a quarterback, but that's okay. These can go well too. Make sure you have a primary stack, but let's say you started with Christian McCaffrey and then you got George Kittle later. You didn't get Purdy, that's fine. But, later on in the draft, you got Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. Okay. So you would have your primary stack would be Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. Your secondary stack would have been Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. Secondary stacks are great too. Just make sure you're picking great players. Now, week 17 stacks, as I said, you're really building for high end outcomes. This is an underdog specific underdog best ball mania type outcome you're building for, or DraftKings million outcome you're building for. Where theirs is like 1,000 people week 17 final, or 539 entrant week 17 final on underdog. So you are trying to beat 539 people that week. So you're trying to correlate for a high end outcome. Now, if you're just doing a best ball league with 11 on the people, that's not something you need to worry about. So don't do week 17 stacks for that. Or, like I said, if you're playing on drafters in any of their contests, they don't do week 17 finals. It's weeks 1 through 17. So you don't need to worry about stacking specifically for week 17. Now, when to stack, it's important. Again, kind of goes back to that. It's important, but don't overstack. Don't take, Kyler Murray, and then you get Trey McBride, and then you get Michael Wilson. You get Greg Dortch. You're getting Kyler Murray +4. Like you don't need all that. So don't get carried away with it. Now, one of the things I like to emphasize is just focus on drafting good players from good teams. So think, and this is whether or not you have them in a stack, with or without a stack. So think AJ Brown, think CeeDee Lamb, think Amon-Ra St. Brown, Christian McCaffrey, Ja'Marr Chase. These are good players on good teams. Now, as far as, what you want to target with like stacks, teams with high win totals. Vegas puts these out, these over-unders, teams with high win totals, like the Chiefs, for example. So we want to target teams we think are going to score a lot of points. If you think what we saw from Kansas City last year was an outlier, and they're really going to pick it up this year with Mahomes, Kelsey, Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice isn't going to get suspended. If you think that's the case, like draft several Chiefs, for example, even on teams where you don't have Patrick Mahomes. Maybe you take Isaiah Pacheco and still take Travis Kelsey. You get that secondary stack. Also, chase volume, specifically in the early part of your draft. Like, it's going to be hard to find guys late in the draft who are getting a lot of volume typically. So target guys early who will be the focal points of the offense. Now, historical data. This is just something I want to briefly touch on because this is a best ball for beginners, so I don't want to go too deep into this. I just will say last year's 500K winner of Drafters Fantasy, their million contest, he went wide receiver in 4 of his first 5 picks. So it's kind of how I was saying, take wide receivers early and often. Now, we talked about zero RB, we talked about hero RB, but also it's okay. It's a guide. It's just kind of a hybrid of the two is what works most often. You'll see this team right here. He took AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb with his first 2 picks, and he took Josh Jacobs. So that's not exactly zero RB. It's not exactly hero RB. It's kind of a hybrid. So take good players, but again, historical data will show you want to go wide receiver heavy with your early picks, as he got 4 out of the first 5. Now, roster construction is crucial in best ball. So this is, again, a guide for you. Of the top 10 finishers in last year's Drafters Million, this was the average number of players drafted at each position. So use it as a guide. If you take one elite QB, you're only going to draft one more quarterback. So that's kind of the rule. So you're only going to draft one more quarterback to cover the bye week, but draft no more than 3 quarterbacks in general. So you will not, whether you take an elite QB or not, don't draft more than 3 quarterbacks. So 3 is the max. Running backs, you're typically going to draft no more than 5 to 7 running backs. So you want to target guys late who have a path to an every down role. Like Zach Charbonnet. Should something happen to Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet is a guy who could have an every down role. Audric Estime. If Javonte Williams goes down, Audric Estime is most likely the back to have in the Denver backfield for an every down role. So you're typically going to want about 6 running backs. You're going to want about 8 wide receivers. You hit hit wide receivers early, often, and try to finish with 8 to 9 in the 20 roster spot formats, like Drafters Fantasy. Tight end is much like quarterback. If you are going to take an elite tight end, only draft a second one for their bye week. I would take no more than 3 tight ends, 4 max. And that would be if I was really just waiting on tight end and I'm just trying to hit on one late one. So that's pretty much it, guys. I wanted to keep this pretty brief. These are basics, but to bring it all together, draft like you're right. So that's what you want to do. That's one of the most important things. You should draft like you think a certain team is going to have a big year. Again, you're going in all in on Kyler Murray. You like Marvin Harrison Jr. You like Trey McBride. Maybe you get Michael Wilson. Same thing, Anthony Richardson. You want him with Pittman or Adonai Mitchell or Josh Downs. Mahomes with his pass catcher. So draft like you're right. Contest selection is key. The larger the contest, the more upside your lineup needs. If you're drafting a 12 person, this should look like your redraft league. Just keep in mind, you can't play the waiver wire. You can't make trades. So if you are drafting in a large tournament, upside. You need some upside guys who can really shoot for the moon. So you almost have to have the perfect draft. Again, schedule and scoring. Know your schedule and scoring. Bye week schedule. Know what type of format you're playing in. Again, Drafters Fantasy, they do weeks 1 through 17 scoring, so you're not worried about week 17 correlations. You are worried about your quarterback stack, maybe a secondary stack, but not week 17. So know your schedule and scoring. Draft strategy. Where are you starting? Are you going towards the end of the first? Maybe you want to start, with double wide receiver because you don't like any of the running backs there. Again, if you're going third, maybe you want to start with Christian McCaffrey when he falls to you when the first 2 people go wide receiver. So this can vary, but have a plan and stick to it. Essentially, it's not always exactly hero RB. It's not always exactly zero RB. It's hybrid, but in general, have a plan and stick to it. Stacking, again, remember to get your QB plus a pass catcher. If you can put in another secondary stack like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamar Gibbs, awesome. And your roster construction, have a guide that you want to stick to. So again, 2 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 8 wide receivers, and 3 tight ends is average on drafters, for example. So keep in mind, just as you're going along to your draft, just keep tally. Sign up bonuses. So if you are actually going to give best ball a try, you can get 100% deposit match to play best ball with my promo code. So use code FANTASYFLING for 100% deposit match on Drafters Fantasy. I will put Drafters Fantasy in the video. I will put a link to that for you to sign up. Same with Underdog Fantasy. So you can use code FANTASYFOOTBALLFLING for 100% deposit match on Drafters Fantasy. I really suggest if you are giving best ball a try, play on Drafters Fantasy before you play on Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is a lot sharper. Yes, the contests are better. If you want that, a shot that 1.5 million, go ahead, take a shot. But Drafters Fantasy, there's less to worry about. The players aren't quite as sharp as they are in Underdog Fantasy. So I really suggest using Underdog Fantasy. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this helps. Now's the time to draft. Give it a try. Make it real. Don't do so many mock drafts. Give best ball a try. And thanks. Really appreciate you joining me. Hope you win some money this year. Hope you love best ball. Maybe you'll find a new passion. And definitely make sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll see y'all next time.